folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and we're here for a special crossover episode for you today. We do baseball episodes every once in a while. We do Maryland basketball every once in a while. This is a little bit of a weird one with a weird origin we're going to get into, but we're going to talk about the Wrexham Football Club. You may have seen the show on Hulu. I'm right about that, right, Spencer?
That's correct, yeah. Hulu, yeah. In the US.
Welcome to Wrexham. And I'm sure a lot of you have also seen Ted Lasso. But we have joining us today is Spencer Harris, who is the former director of the Wrexham Football Club, prior to a monumental change that came about that is documented very well in the episode. We're going to get into a little bit about this. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about English football, English/Welsh football, let's make it that way, and the promotion system and a very weird in-season tournaments that conflict with their schedule a little bit. And Spencer's going to tell us a lot about that. So Spencer, first of all, thank you for coming on and tell us a little bit about your background with Wrexham.
Hey, Ken, very nice to be on. Thank you for the invite. So my background with Wrexham, I'm a long-standing football, maybe in the US you'd know it as soccer, but football supporter. I've supported Wrexham FC all of my life, and I had the privilege of being a director of the club in the period 2011 to 2021. So I was the football club was owned by a community benefit society, so the Wrexham community owned it. Fully professional football club, averaging around 5,000 supporters per game whilst we were running the club, and then was part of, or if you like, the primary mover behind the sale of Wrexham AFC to Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, a Canadian/US crossover, who now own the football club and bring all sorts of celebrities here to North Wales.
So if you've seen the show, you know, it is just an unbelievable star power that these two bring. And it's a comical show, and I really love it because of Rob McElhenney is really a B-level star. I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. I hope I might be insulting somebody there, but he's a B-level star. Was a star of the Philadelphia show. What's it called?
Yeah, it's always sunny in Philadelphia, right?
So it's always sunny in Philadelphia. And of course, Ryan Reynolds has been on things for about 20 years in the U.S. With one of his major roles being Deadpool, but he's in all sorts of commercials and whatnot. And he's really an A-list star now in the U.S. But these two came together, and I think it was Rob's idea originally to buy the team, right?
That's correct. During COVID lockdown, an associate of Rob's, Humphrey Kerr, would always he's a guy from England, and he was always watching football during their breaks from filming in the US, and he got Rob interested in that way in the rules, and Rob had the idea and brought Ryan Reynolds on board with him.
All right, so the two of them came in to try and make an offer to buy the team and whatnot. Give me an idea of maybe Wrexham football of your youth and Wrexham football of the mid 20-teens and what had happened. It'd been a number of years in the same league for Wrexham.
Yes, so Wrexham is the third oldest professional football club anywhere in the world. And the ground, the stadium that we play at is known as the Racecourse. And the Racecourse is the oldest international football stadium still in use anywhere in the world. So the first football international, which was between Wales and Scotland, was held there in the 1870s, believe it or not. And there is a black and white footage of that game. So Wrexham, long-standing, very historical club. When I was growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, Wrexham, if you think about football, very different in English football versus American sports. So there is a league system from which you can get promoted. So if you can imagine, a lot of people will know the Premier League, where you've got your Manchester Uniteds and your Arsenals and your Liverpools. The division below that is now known as the Championship, but back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was Division 2. So it wasn't the Premier League, it was Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there was divisions that was non-professional below that. So Wrexham, when I was growing up, was in the second tier, if you like, what's now known as the Championship.
Okay, so first of all, the concept of promotion is really foreign to a lot of American fans prior to a few years ago. Now, a lot of people know about it now, and a lot of it from watching Ted Lasso or Welcome to Wrexham, or a few other English Premier League games, if for people who become a fan of that. But the concept is very foreign. I remember a Dutch guy explaining it to me in about 1990, and I was like, how can they have any stability? How can the owners know what they have in terms of ownership? And what kind of a change in value is it for moving up or down a league, just in a relative sense?
It can be absolutely massive. The financial gains of moving up from one division to another are quite significant. The biggest leap is from what's now the second tier, the Championship, to the Premier League, where we're talking in £100 million difference between income in one level to the next. So it's a gargantuan step. Not quite as big a step as you sort of drop down the leagues, but still we're talking multiple millions of pounds as you drop down through the divisions. So very often what teams will do, they will guard against relegation, as it's known, if you drop down through the types of contracts that they may offer to players over the duration of their contract, and their contract value might go up if they achieve promotion up to the next level. It becomes you're quite right. It can bring a level of instability. It also brings with it high excitement, because being a Jets fan in NFL, who've perennially been sort of third or fourth in their division of the AFC, there's no consequence for Woody Johnson if he doesn't invest properly in the team, or they have yet another poor season. They don't fall out. They get the same income. It's all very stable, but there's no jeopardy there. Yes, there's a reward if you do better, but the jeopardy isn't there, and that jeopardy brings with it excitement.
Okay, so what I've always been told about leagues which have the possibility of promotion or relegation is that the competition is very high at the top and it's very high at the bottom, but in the middle of the table, as you'd say, there and there are often 20 or 24 teams per level.
Yes, so it's normally 24 teams per level. But there is another but to this. In the promotion, it may be 2 or 3 teams who would get automatic promotion. But what happens now, there's a playoff system. So the first sort of 2 or 3 teams, depending on the division, some divisions have 2, some have 3. The first 2 or 3 get automatic promotion for finishing first or second, let's say, and the next 4 teams go into a playoff. Mm-hmm. So actually, because the number comes down to the 6th or 7th team at the end of the season, still have an opportunity for promotion, what that means is that actually until quite late in the season, very often multiple teams still have the opportunity to either fall into the relegation slots or to get a chance at being in the playoffs for promotion. So that extends the season, so you don't get this malaise of sort of 10, 12 teams sat in the middle saying, I'm all right, and not putting in the effort.
Okay, so there's no divisions the way the NFL has 8 divisions. That your 24 teams are in one table. It's one home and home match against each team. Correct. For the season, yeah. That's so correct. 46 games then for everybody. Are there any changes in that at various levels? Like they have only 38 games and they don't play somebody at home every other year or something?
No, so the only difference is in the Premier League, actually. In divisions 2, 3, and 4 of the English Football League, there is 46 games. You have the 24 teams, 46 home, 46 away games. In the Premier League, there's only 20 teams, so they have less games to play. And the rationale behind that is, in the Premier League, the top teams end up going into European competition and have a number of other competitions on top in season, which means, if they were trying to play 46 games, league games as well, just would not be possible.
Okay, so let's talk about that also, because this has just come to the NBA, having an in-season tournament where they're trying to replicate some of what Europe has in terms of additional excitement. But you have the FA Cup brings together teams from all the divisions of English football. Divisions, give me the correct term for that. The leagues of English football, levels of English football.
That's right. That's right. So anybody, the amazing thing about the FA Cup is that anybody can enter it. If you've got a registered team with the English FA or the Welsh FA, you can enter and you play in the English league system. You can play in the FA Cup. So the FA Cup actually starts in August, and you have hundreds and hundreds of teams who compete, and they all go through pre-qualifying rounds. And in theory, somebody who's playing virtually park level football could get to the final and win the FA Cup. So what you find is teams from, who are not in the top 4 divisions of the English system sometimes get all the way, to quite far. And what happens is, at the 3rd round of the FA Cup, that's when the big teams such as your Manchester United, your Liverpools, your Arsenals and Tottenhams of this world, they enter the FA Cup at the 3rd round. So that's the magic round where all of the smaller teams are trying to get to, so that they've got the opportunity of trying to draw one of the big boys.
Okay, so and is it the top 2 divisions come in at the 3rd round, or just the Premier League?
So it's the Football League. So the top 4 divisions come in at the 1st round. So sorry, divisions 2, 3, and 4 come in at round 1, and then at round 3 you then also bring in the Premier League teams as well.
Okay, so Wrexham has had some pretty decent results in the FA Cup recently, and that's really unusual for a. Well, actually, let's get back to this, because I want to talk about the history of Wrexham a little bit first, and where they were, where they by the mid 2010s were, and then what's happened since Robin Ryan bought the team. So, talk a little bit about the history from the 70s.
Okay, so when I was growing up, as I said earlier, Wrexham were in the 2nd tier of football. Then they dropped all the way down to the 4th tier of football by the early 2000s, and then unfortunately we had some unscrupulous owners, and the club actually dropped out of what's known as the Football League into the 5th tier of football. And that's when the supporters had to come together to take over the running of the football club through a community benefit society, because the club was in danger of actually going out of business. So it's a fully professional club. So the supporters took over the running of that and appointed a board of directors to run the affairs of the business on their behalf, of which I was one of 5 people asked to do that. So we've gone from the 2nd tier all the way down to the 5th tier, which is now known as non-league, out of the Football League. It's still a professional league. There's 3 or 4 semi-professional teams in that division, but most of the teams are still fully professional at the 5th tier down. And we were there in that division for the entire ownership of where I was involved in running the club. So because we were community owned, we didn't have the biggest budgets. We did have big crowds for that level of football. As I said earlier, 5,000 to all of our home games. So our crowds were big, but so were our costs with our big stadium. So it was very difficult. But we stayed at that level for 10 years.
Now, one of the things that captured very well on the show was the state of the race course itself. That while beautiful old facility, it's got this pub built in right underneath the stadium, which is kind of like the fan central of the place. But yep. Talk a little bit about the state of one set of stands had kind of crumbled away, right?
So Prior to us actually taking ownership of the team, the previous owners shut one end of the stadium, known as the Cop. When it was last opened in 2008, it was the largest standing area still open at a football stadium in the UK. Huge expanse of standing area. You could get up to 13,000 people stood on that one area of the ground. But it was shut and it was crumbling away. You can find pictures of it. The concrete had failed, and therefore that was shut during the entirety of our ownership of the 10 years. We didn't have the money to redevelop it, but what we did do is get national government to purchase all of the land around that area of the stadium, in order for when somebody else came in, we could redevelop it and then return international football back to North Wales. And that's the current plan with Rob and Ryan.
So let's get back to the standing stands for just one more second. There have been some incidents, I know, certainly at concerts, at other things. It's not specific to the UK at all, but where standing stands have been very dangerous because there's a lot of pressing and people, if those standing room areas get overloaded, you end up with some potential for injuries, right?
That's correct. So in British football, at lower levels, so in the bottom two tiers, if you like, in the fourth division and the third division of English football, you can still have standing areas. So there are many grounds around the country that still remain to have standing areas. If you want to go up to the Premier League, you have to have a fully seated stadium, or a stadium that has safe standing, which are rail seats, and those are designated standing areas, which has got a seat that you can just lock up. So people can actually stand up in those areas, and it's known as safe standing. So that is being introduced in the Premier League. Chelsea, for example, have some safe standing areas within their stadium.
Okay. All right. So I guess let's talk a little bit about Rob and Ryan coming in and what were their goals in terms of, obviously, all they talk about ever on the show is, well, not all they talk about, but a very significant portion of the show is about the possibility of getting promoted and the chess moves they need to make to get there.
Yeah, so Rob and Ryan came in with two, if you like, key goals. One was around community, actually, and they've done a heck of a lot in the community. They've made all sorts of donations to different group and individual causes, as well as using the power of the brand that Wrexham AFC has got now to do good in the local area. So there's been a huge focus on community, whether that be wheelchair football through to all sorts of different things. And then the second piece that they wanted to do was to gain promotion. So Rob and Ryan, if you look at Rob has got huge ambitions, wants to take the club all the way to the Premier League. And Ryan has got a very savvy business record. If you look at the sale of his aviation gin to Diageo, or you look at Mint Mobile in the US, you've got Maximum Performance, his marketing company, which does some great things. Actually did a Super Bowl halftime advert for Stoke coffee, cold brew coffee, that actually featured the Wrexham mascot being played by Anthony Hopkins, the famous Welsh actor. So that was on at halftime at the Super Bowl. So they're very business savvy, and what they wanted to do was gain promotion so that they can take the club up the leagues and grow it and increase the value of that business. And they set about that through, they needed to invest in the playing squad, invest in some upgrade to the stadium, and that's what they've been doing. But very cleverly at the same time, they've been massively driving the income levels of the business through the power of their brand and what they can do around the world. And that's made a remarkable difference. So I'll give you an example to that. When I was a director of the football club, the sort of the turnover of the business in pounds was around, depending on a really good season where we might have had a good player sale, might have been at a high water mark of around 3.8 million.
Okay, turnover is revenue to an American business?
Correct. So
Okay.
what's your revenue of the business? Okay, what's your total income of that business?
And that's
So
a gross income, not a net income, is the
correct,
point.
gross income. So we would have been turning over around 3.8 at a high watermark, down to around 2 million at a low watermark, depending on what happened. A good cup run or a good player sale, all of that would be the high and the low point. The turnover of the business this year will be somewhere in the region of 25 million pounds. So, in effect, they've created 10 football clubs out of one in terms of the revenue or the turnover, as I might know it.
Now, some of that is from being one league higher, but how much of it is the power of the brand now in terms of the amount of Wrexham jerseys you're selling, and is the success of the show at all tied to that, or is that strictly Rob and Ryan money that is outside of the Wrexham Football Club?
So the advantage, the additional straight income from going one league higher, I'm going to net that out at about 1.5 million pounds per year income, there or thereabouts. So the rest of the growth, probably 20 million of it, is through income through the show, through the branding. Now I'm wearing one of my Wrexham tops with United Airlines on the front, right? United, Stoke Cold Brew Coffee. I've got HP on the sleeve. All of the commercial partnerships that we've got, our home revenue now, our gates at the stadium has gone from averaging 5,000 per game to 12,500 a game, and the stadium sold out at 12,500. We could sell many more tickets from that. So when you add all of those different bits together, that's what's driving that revenue.
Has in terms of actual ticket prices, has that been increased much over the last couple of years with the success?
No, we have seen a small inflation increase, but not significantly, no. So they've not doubled, trebled, quadrupled the price of the tickets. They're virtually what they were as when I was running the club.
Okay, so the ticket sale gains is all very arithmetic in terms of what you could gain out of that, but the branding is potentially geometric, and that's where you having a show on TV where the uniforms say United Airlines on the front is a hell of a lot better than just having a game where people are there, or even a TV broadcast.
Absolutely. And in the summer, in our pre-season last year, we went to the US and played a number of friendlies. We actually played Manchester United and Chelsea in the US, and sold out stadiums, 50, 60,000 stadiums, where there were as many Wrexham fans there as there were Chelsea or Manchester United. So it's incredible, really, the impact of what's happened with Wrexham and the partnership with the US. I mean, I was on a US-based Wrexham podcast this week called "Teach Me How to Wrexham," where it's where there's an American guy, really nice guy from Arizona, who's showing and talking to American audiences how they can understand more about football, or soccer as you'll know it by, and more about Wrexham and the division it's in and the city and things. So really unbelievable numbers of people actually coming over for the games from the US as well.
Now, tremendously heartwarming TV show, by the way, which I'd recommend to people. And a lot of it, they do talk about promotion. They talk about the operation of the club, but they also very much into the individual stories of the Wrexham community. And I don't really want to honestly spend a lot of time on this on this particular show, but it is something that I think people will really enjoy. And there's a lot of individual stories, and it's not just about the players. There's some of that certainly, but it's also about the fans. And one of the ones that was really of interest to me was the decidedly weird podcaster who seems to be central to several of the episodes. He's appeared probably on 8 episodes or maybe more by now, who seems to follow the club.
Yeah, there's a number of characters, and there's many more characters. You'll know, being a Ravens fan, right? Around the stadium and in the fan base, there'll be some real characters who might dress up at the games or whatever. We've got a number of characters around around our football. Some are shown, some not. One, I'll tell you a story. There's one guy called. He's a guy, must be in his late 50s, I would say now, maybe early 60s. And they call him Timmy the Bush Kangaroo, and he actually he on the away travel trips on the bus, they sing his song Timmy the Bush Kangaroo, and he hops like a kangaroo up and down the aisle of the bus. Just absolutely bonkers. But there's so many characters around the sports team. Wrexham have got them. The Ravens will have some fantastic ones.
Real Fan Dan or Captain Defense, if you want to think of similar people.
And the Jets the same, right?
Yeah, they have their guys. So let's see. What else I want to talk about this? Talk about the progress in the first. They're in the 3rd season of ownership now with Rob and Ryan, right? So talk about kind of the outcome of each season from a team perspective.
So they took over the team midway in their first season. So when we left, I like to say when I left the club, we were on course for promotion, which we were, and their first season, it was a half season. They just missed out on the playoffs from that 5th division to try and get in the playoffs to get back into the into the playoffs to go up through promotion. So they missed out in their first season. Their second season, they reached the playoffs, but failed in the playoffs. Actually, they got beat. It was a tremendous game against a team called Grimsby Town, and it ended up 5-4, which in football terms is a really 50 incredible to 40 game. Yeah, that's right. And I can remember being at that game, and I was just watching it, and I was absolutely shattered just watching the game. It was awful. Anyway, so in their first season and a half, they failed.
So that episode that covers that game is the last episode, I believe, of the first season, right? Of the show.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable back and forth match that it's just one of those things. It's like you wouldn't believe it if you just saw the way it was done. And it was a bunch of lead changes, wasn't it? It was 2 goals for one, then 2 goals for the other a lot of the time.
That's right. It swung one way and another. The one team went ahead, then the other team went ahead. And it was just heartbreaking at the end to lose it 5-4. So in their first, in the first season of the show, you see the first season and a half, but it's if you like, it's 2 endings to 2 separate seasons in which they didn't end with promotion. Then in their if you like, the 3rd or the 2nd season of the documentary, their 3rd season of ownership of the club, they actually end up getting promoted, and it's an amazing season because it's the first. Wrexham end up the season winning the division and getting automatic promotion with 111 points. And from that 5th division, there's only 1 automatic promotion place, and everybody else goes in the playoffs. And they battle all season with a team called Notts County. Notts County, we're the 3rd oldest professional club in the world. Notts County are the oldest professional football club anywhere in the world. Juventus, the famous Italian team, wear a black and white striped kit that they copied Notts County's kit. So that's how how storied and old a club Notts County are. And we battled all season, and it came down to the last couple of games of the season, and Notts County came to the racecourse, their home of Wrexham, and both teams were on 100 points. It's the first time in the history of British football where two clubs have ended up at the end of the season with 100 points or more. So there's 2 games to go. Both teams are on 100 points, and it's almost a winner-takes-all game. And it ends up back and forth. Wrexham are losing at halftime 1-0. And it ends up with the last 5 minutes of the game, Wrexham are actually winning 3-2. And Notts County get a penalty, which is a kick from 18 yards or 15 yards, sorry, within the 18-yard area, and a shot to try and score. And they just got to score that, and it's 3-3, and then maybe the season ends up differently. But Wrexham had brought back a 40 plus year old goalkeeper who'd played for us when he was in his early 20s, called Ben Foster, somebody who was an ex-England international and played for Manchester United. He left Wrexham to go to Manchester United, and he saved the penalty. It was the most unbelievable save because the lad hit a great penalty. There was nothing wrong with the penalty, and Ben saved it with one hand, but it was still going in, and he managed to get his other hand to it and clawed it away, and that won us the game and won us promotion. It was the most unbelievable end to a season.
Just the story with that goaltender really brings up a lot of the value of the star power and the brand that Wrexham has, because now, as I understand it, Wrexham pretty much is one of the teams that looks up to buy talent to bring back down, but they're a very attractive landing spot now for a player who's trying to have a prove-it year, as we'd call it in the NFL.
Correct. So Wrexham now tend to, when we were running the club, we would sort of be looking at players below us who were trying to make their way up. Wrexham now is looking at players at a higher level from which they currently play to constantly to try and raise the bar and be ready to help get promoted to that next level, but to be ready to play there once they arrive at the level, and they have the spending power to be able to do it. So a little bit like going from being a minor league baseball team spending power to being the Yankees, right? With the top spenders in their particular division. Now, they won't be able to do that right the way through the leagues, because in British football, by the time you get to the top level divisions, they're actually owned by nation states. Some of the teams, like Manchester City, is owned by by Dubai. It's incredible as you get further up the pyramid, the amount of money in English football. But certainly at the levels they are the top spenders, and they are a really attractive proposition, not just from a financial perspective to come and play at the racecourse, but also because at an individual level, you get exposure now playing for Wrexham that you wouldn't get other than if you played for a Manchester United or a Liverpool.
All right, so we've seen, Maureen and I have watched both seasons that have been out. The third season will be out sometime soon, right? October?
It's actually coming out early this year. It's coming out, I think it's April the 18th from memory. I know it's April, so it's actually coming out fairly soon. It will come out before the end of this season, which is
How can they do that?
It's a really different play. So I'm not sure of how it will be done, but I'm sure they will be editing as they go. And then as the season is due to finish. So the last game of the regular season is right at the end of April. It's something like April the 30th or something like that, right at the end of April. Now, should they get automatic promotion, their season would end there. And the story could end there. If they end up in the playoffs go on till mid-May. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they actually do that.
Okay, so could it be the case where they release the episodes one at a time, one per week, and then they go like a Hard Knocks? You actually get the real-time training camp view kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's. I don't know. I'm surmising and I'm basing my answer on assumptions. But my assumptions is that's what will happen. They've been editing as they go, and that they will release them. An episode per week that allows them to tell the story beyond the end of the season, but much more in real time than some of the other shows have done. So because they've been coming out in the sort of the October time, and that's drawn a lot of fans in, but now people know what the ending to the story is quite some time in advance. This is bringing the story very, very close to real time, or as close to real time as they could possibly get it, which is an interesting new concept.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea, and I think that the information is out there, so I don't think we're spoiling it for this year. But Wrexham now, some recent difficulty, lost 3 of their last 4 to some not great teams. They did beat the very bottom of the table team this last in their last game, but they still remain 4th, which is in solid position to go ahead and make the tournament. But they were a much better chance, I think, to get automatic promotion, say 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right. So the 3 defeats on the row that we had, other teams have sort of stolen a march on us and had some good results and sort of gone ahead of us in the table, leaving us in 4th. So in our division, there's 3 automatically promoted, and then the next 4 teams play off and have the playoff tournament at the end of the season. We still in our 4th position. We do have we've played a couple of games less than the teams above us because of our in-season tournament in the FA Cup, and is going so far, we had to cancel some league games to play the FA Cup, and therefore we're behind in our schedule. So if we win, and it's always an if we win our games in hand, or the games that we played behind, then we will go back into an automatic promotion slot. So fingers crossed we've seen the last of our poor run of results. Okay,
so it's 3 automatic promotions and then 1 of 4?
Correct.
Okay. All right, interesting. I didn't know that. But anyway, that'll be fascinating. I'm sure it'll be fun to watch, and you can pick this up a lot of different places. Anything else about Wrexham football that we haven't heard about? Maybe some story that's important to you from your youth to now, and how Wrexham football has changed, whether it's for the better or for the worse.
I think the only thing I would say is football in Wrexham is very much a generational thing. So if you can imagine, I know the NFL is about 58 years old. Is it now? Was that the 58th Super
100.
Bowl? Or is it 100?
Yeah, so the Super Bowl concept is a later invention.
Is a later invention
when the AFL and NFL came together. So
okay, well there you go. So I stand corrected. But it's a generational. The Wrexham FC has been going since 1864. So that's around. Is that around the time of the American Civil War?
Yep.
That's right. So it's been going for a long time, and the supporting the team has been passed down from generation to generation. And my father took me when I was really small to the games, and if Wrexham would score, he would throw me up in the air, and I never ever forgot that feeling. And it for many people have had the same experience, and it's something that gives you an opportunity to enjoy with the family. But also the unique part of, I think, of Wrexham and the way in which it plays football is we are a Welsh football club that plays in the English football league. And what that means is almost every week there are 3 other Welsh clubs that do the same: Newport County, Cardiff City, and Swansea City. So there's 4 of us. But the other 96 clubs, out of, or the 92 out of the 96, the other 92 are English. So almost every week you're playing, it's Wales versus England. It's an international. We sing our national anthem, My Home Wlad Fy Nhadau, the land of my fathers, as it's translated into English. And the English club will invariably sing God Save the King, or whatever it is that they want to sing. So it's almost like a mini international every single week, which gives it a real unique spice.
That's very cool. And certainly, Ravens fans and many of the NFL fans travel well, and so you might have 4,000 or 5,000 Ravens fans at another city's game. We're very fortunate because we live in the hub of an airline, which will take you to any NFL city, a Southwest. But if is this the same is true for Wrexham? A lot of bus travel for those games?
Correct. So we tend to sell out our away allocation wherever we go. So this season, in the division that we're in, sometimes you can get some stadiums that can hold enough to give you 3,000 or 4,000, and we would take 3,000 or 4,000. In the FA Cup, our last FA Cup game was against Blackburn Rovers, a Championship club, on a Monday. So this is a Monday night, a work night, and we took 7,000 fans away to Blackburn. That's a couple of hours away, but it's on a Monday night is some on Tuesday night down to South London, which is about 4.5 hour travel down there, getting back in the very early hours of the morning. We took 1,000 fans down to Sutton. So we travel particularly well wherever we go. Certainly for our level of football, there isn't a team that takes as many away fans.
All right. So one thing Spencer and I certainly have in common is a lot of travel for sports, but we also happen to meet in Kenya, which is a weird thing. And I'll tell you, this is a kind of a funny story, but you're assigned your Jeep mates as soon as you get there. And there's usually 3 couples per Jeep that go with a single driver, and they're there for the same period so they can have the same kind of animal rotation, and you're not fighting over whether you want to see a leopard or a cheetah or more lions today, because lions are like deer there as far as I'm concerned. but you have the same kind of experience and opportunity to take photographs. So Maureen and I were in the Jeep with 2 Welsh couples who lived 13 miles apart and didn't know each other. So it's really, really weird that would happen there. But a lot of travel there, I guess, from the UK, right?
Yeah. So the interesting thing, one thing you might not know about that Kenya trip as well, Ken, is that as well as that proximity that we had of somebody next to us on the Jeep, we were in the restaurant one night, and there was somebody on the table next to me who's from my village, who lives, who lives. I didn't know the person, but they recognised me from the football club, who lives less than, probably as the crow flies, about 500 meters from me. So, and we're in the middle of Kenya, in the middle of the bush. But yeah, lots of travel. With work, I do a bit of US travel, so I'm over in Chicago in about 6 weeks' time. Really looking forward to that.
But and as a football fan, I know you've traveled to the Middle East to go to games. You were talking about, where were you talking about going to? Was it Georgia or someplace you'd gone to a game, or maybe it was Dubai?
So recently, as well as a supporter of Wrexham FC, I'm also a supporter of the Welsh national football team. So I was in Qatar in November 22 for the World Cup. Yeah, was it 22 or 23? Yeah, 22. Was it 22 or 23? I can't remember. Was it 22
I think you told me about it. So if it was so it would have
been 22. Yeah, so it would have been 22. I was in Qatar, so I went to the World Cup, and I actually watched Wales play out a 1-1 draw with the USA in Qatar. So that was an interesting experience. And then just a few months ago, at the end of 2023, I went to watch Wales away in Armenia, which is, an old Soviet state. So that was an interesting trip. And we're just planning our next trip, which will be to watch Wales play away in Iceland. So I'm really looking forward to that trip.
That's a nice, safe one. Yeah, Armenia, I don't know. But very cool. Well, I really appreciate having you on, Spencer. Lots of great stories here. Would you like to give any place where people can talk Wrexham football with you, or if they have a question about it, they could ask you someplace on Twitter, perhaps, or prefer to keep that private?
Yeah. So if people want, I've got a Twitter handle. It's at Tada1973, Tada being TADA 1973. So you'll find me on Twitter there. You'll find me posting about Wrexham AFC. You'll find me posting loads of stuff about the Jets as well. I'm a massive Jets and New York Jets fan. I know I always pick terrible teams to support, but I'm hoping next year with Aaron Rodgers, maybe we'll do a little bit better and maybe make the playoffs.
All right, very good. You can always hope, right? Jets still have C.J. Mosley. He had a great year for them this last year.
Yeah, he did. Well, defense is fine. Nothing wrong with the defense. We need an offensive line, a couple of wide receivers, and we're good to go.
just Babe Ruth and Sandy Koufax away from having a contender. Gotcha. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. My historical show this offseason will be your favorite Raven who's not a star. So once there was a player kind of thing, I want you to hit me up with those. I've already gotten those 6 or 7 players requested just off the list. Adelis Thomas, Derek Mason, Ovi Muhaley, Paul Kruger, and Jarrett Johnson. Everybody seems to want Jarrett Johnson. So come up with a player that was just special to you for some reason. Love to hear from you. I'll get back to you very quickly. We'll put you on the schedule. Spencer, thanks a ton for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.